This podcast is made possible by Vena.
Hi, this is Craig Abrams, President and CFO of Playtika, and you are listening to the CFO Thought Leader Podcast.
This is episode 845.
At the moment, we're growing in excess of 50% year on year. We're implementing new technologies, which is obviously then accelerating the growth for us. And even this year alone, we've had massive increases in our pipelines, and there's just so much work out there and coming across. So for me, the main thing is going to be making sure we've got that cash on hand, getting some kind of, funding in place, or renegotiating terms with some kind of suppliers or customers even, just to keep the cash flow going. But effectively, the main priority is going to be managing the scaling of the operations and making sure that we're able to continue the business in an effective manner.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Darren Cooper, CFO of Reveal Group. We caught up with Darren at last month's Sweet World in Las Vegas. So this was an in-person interview, and I have to tell you, CFO Darren Cooper is a CFO of few words. But that's okay. We asked the questions. He answered them, and what comes through is the discipline, is the focus, is the results orientation. The signature characteristics of successful finance leaders. When Darren Cooper was named CFO of Reveal Group of Melbourne, Australia in 2019, there was no friendly board member or executive recruiter seeking kudos for having completed a successful CFO search. Instead, Cooper tells us his twist of fate was due to a personal relationship that he had established with Reveal Management after his prior company had hired Reveal to provide the company its technology services. The fact is, the door to the CFO office swings open via all types of relationships, with many being developed over a period of years, as CFO Cooper explains after this. Managing multiple spreadsheets, disconnected data, numbers you just can't trust. Your finance team can't be the strategic partner your organization needs right now, with obstacles like that getting in your way. Vena can change that. Vena brings people, processes, and systems together in a single collaborative analytical platform so you can drive connected business planning and better decision making. And it's the only native Excel complete planning platform built for Microsoft 365 with Power BI embedded. With Vena, your financial and operational data is always connected, and your teams are always armed with insights and time to focus on what matters most. So when the stakes are high and the margin for error low, plan with agility, plan with resilience, plan with Vena, so you can be prepared for whatever comes next. Visit venasolutions.com/planningaces to learn more about how Vena will help you plan for anything. Hello, we're speaking with Darren Cooper, CFO of the Reveal Group. Darren, welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon. Nice to be here.
So, Darren, we begin with this question. We ask our guests to look back for us and identify some of those experiences they feel prepared them for a finance leadership role. When you look back, what comes to mind?
Oh, look, I think the first thing is probably the sort of studying and article portion of the career. Obviously getting that solid foundation in terms of what you're needing to do, how it needs to be done. And probably even more so is, whilst you're busy doing your articles, you're auditing a number of different companies,
help us out here. Articles here, and you begin. Did you grow up in South Africa?
Yes. I grew up in South Africa.
I know you landed at South Africa, Deloitte, but when you compare it to your American peers, what's different? Maybe what's a little different about getting and is it chartered? You get certification?
Yeah, so in South Africa it's called a chartered accountant. I guess the closest thing on the US side is a CPA. And I'm not overly familiar with the CPA sort of equivalent and criteria there, but in order to become chartered accountant in South Africa, you've got to do your sort of 3 years of articles or internship. I did mine at Deloitte, as you mentioned. During which time you write a couple other professional exams in the process, and only at the end of that, once you've actually ticked off all your sort of core competencies, do you get signed off and then apply for membership as chartered accountant.
Just to take a step back, it seems like you were pretty directed from an early age, right out of high school perhaps, that numbers were going to be part of your life.
Yeah, look, I've always been confident with numbers. I always enjoyed the math and accounting element of things, although with that being said, don't ask me to do math in my head. I do certainly prefer calculators and Excel. But yeah, I mean, when I finished with school, I wasn't entirely sure which way I was going to go, and I almost fell into it, and just so happens that I quite enjoyed it. So,
Did you ever think of going the partner route, or wasn't that for you?
No, I've never really been that interested in the audit side of things. It's just something that you kind of had to do to tick the boxes and to get qualified. But no, hadn't.
When you do decide to leave public accounting, what finally draws you outside?
Oh, the dream of a better life.
In what sense?
No, it's for me the audit gets a bit monotonous, a bit too much of the same thing. Yes, you've got different clients, different industries, but it's more or less the same thing, the same process. So, by moving out into a commerce sort of role, you get a very different experience, different practice. Every day comes with different problems that you need to solve for.
Where do you go? What type of industry or what type of role do you take on outside of public accounting?
Generally, you move into some kind of financial manager, assistant financial manager.
But what about you? Tell us about what was there a recruiter or what brought you there?
Yes, after I left Deloitte, I actually did a couple of years at BDO as audit manager. I felt it would be good just to have a different company's experience, different way of doing things, different level of obviously interacting, and just having all those discussions, at board level, at audit committee level, engaging with CFOs, CEOs on a day-to-day basis around the audits. Obviously working a lot closer with the partners as well.
The types of businesses you are auditing, again, are you in Johannesburg? Where are you?
Yes, I did my articles in Johannesburg. I was actually in the entrepreneurial services department of Deloitte, which is one of the smaller sort of growing startup kind of departments.
So there's certain dominant industries that you're auditing?
No, it was very broad, and that was one of the main reasons I actually chose that industry, is to get the diversification. I didn't want to end up at some corporate company where you sit for 6-9 months of the year and you just tick through a million invoices. I wanted the change in scenery every couple of weeks, a month or two, and you move on to just get that wide range.
You move into a financial management role. Okay, you're inside a finance function at this point, meaning there's a CFO at the top of it, and there are other tiers as well.
So when I first moved across,
Yeah.
So I moved as a sort of assistant group financial manager. I was involved there for a couple of years before moving up into the financial manager role, and then we got bought out by another company. I ended up moving across into that company's head office, and then shortly after that transferred across to Australia as a CFO for the group that I was with at the time.
Okay, so that's how it happens. You did it internally, and they said, "Are you interested?" And you said yes.
Yeah. That's pretty much it, yep.
Trying to understand who you are. Are you a networker? Were you networking? Or are you someone with your head down, getting the work done, dependable? Help us understand.
Yeah, no, me, I just put my head down and work. I I mean, I can get out and talk and do a little bit of networking things here and there. It's not really, well, I don't think it's my strong point, although other people do seem to see me as like a social butterfly of sorts and all the rest. But no, I prefer just getting in, putting my head down.
Yeah.
You know.
So you got this rather high appointment, and it was in a satellite office, or how would you characterize it? Is it a division that's in Australia?
It was a totally separate sort of set of subsidiaries. So it was the APAC region that I was appointed as CFO of. Obviously, I'd worked within the group for 4 or 5 years beforehand, so the guys knew me, they knew how I worked. And yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a bit of a relocation in the process to Australia.
And you stayed there for a good number of years.
Look, from start to finish was probably about 7 or 8 years. I don't typically think it's a fantastic idea to stay at a company for that kind of period unless you're getting a constant change and growth in the role that you're in. I was fortunate enough that in pretty much effectively every sort of year and a half to 2 years there was some kind of either promotion or change for me in the group, which was great. And yeah, ultimately.
And when you do leave, you leave for a CFO job, a global CFO job. You're no longer just a geography CFO, I guess.
Yeah, well, when I first moved across to Australia, I was initially CFO of just the Australia or the APAC operations. So Australia, New Zealand, Singapore was where they operated in. Shortly thereafter, I ended up taking on almost a global role. We had some operations in South Africa within professional services that I took on at that point. And then, I actually ended up working with Reveal Group at the time. We partnered with them. So I was the contact at the previous company. Huh? And shortly after that, they ended up offering me a position to join them. And here we are. Now I'm global.
So I want to ask you about Reveal Group, to tell us about it. What does this company do? What are its offerings today? But the other company was Adcorp Holdings Limited. Are these similar in some aspect of their business? What's the nature of them?
No, they're pretty different, and certainly the roles that I had within the group was very different. So, on Adcorp, it's a lot more people management, workforce management. Obviously, they've got some professional services where there's contracts and projects and all the rest, which is relatively similar to what I'm doing at Reveal at the moment.
Okay, let me ask you. I want to ask you about Reveal because I want to give you the opportunity to explain it to us. And since it's the place you are today, let's find out about it. Tell us about Reveal Group. What does this company do? What is it about?
So Reveal Group is a specialist intelligent automation solutions company. So effectively what we do is we do robotic process automation and associated technologies going with it to effectively digitize the process. So for those who don't know, RPA or robotic process automation, what we do is we effectively program little software robots to kind of go in and do the sort of volume processing, the monotonous work, anything that you can, easily define the process of to say, if you get this, then do that, and push it through systems. So, we've got technology that recognizes handwriting from forms. It interacts between systems. And at the end of the day, particularly in the larger companies where you've got high volumes, is you can take out significant costs from the business, and as well as increase the process and efficiencies in the cycle of implementation.
So you joined them in 2019. Can you give us a sense of the growth that is experienced? And of course, you straddled the pandemic. If we're coming out the other side of that now, let's hope. But what type of growth was experienced during your tenure?
Yeah, I think Reveal's been very fortunate in the industry that it is. It was almost pandemic proof. Obviously we had the initial freeze, when everything hit and everybody was locking down all the borders and all the rest. So we had a lot of projects go on hold. We had a lot of projects just get delayed. So in terms of the work that we do, suddenly having everybody out of office, not being able to handle papers, handle whatever the case is, it pretty much lends itself to the position that we're in. So you couple that together with the cost savings and efficiencies that we can add into a business, and it's almost a no-brainer for people to actually engage us to improve their processes and functioning, while saving them a fair amount of cash in the process.
We'd love to know your top-of-mind metrics. So these metrics that you look at before your first cup of coffee in the morning. What are the numbers you're looking at to make you certain that you know how the company's performing?
I think the most important one's a bank account. At the end of the day, got to have the cash on hand to pay everyone. Payroll's our single biggest expense. So that's obviously key. Obviously, having multiple regions that we operate in, we're often transferring funds between the regions, so we've got to have the lead time to make sure it's in the right place at the right time. Outside of that, we tend to follow the pipeline pretty closely, make sure it's growing, it's progressing through. And then revenues, obviously, then the ultimate one. Now, to get to the revenues, largely linked around utilization, timesheets, billings, projects, etc. So it's a very big focus for us to be monitoring those utilization numbers, making sure that the guys are actually booking the correct time to the correct project codes, and then obviously as a result that we get the invoicing out after that.
Is there something that you've begun to measure, and I don't know how data is part of your life or whether you folks are collecting a lot of data in certain areas, but since you've been there, have you begun to measure, a business dynamic that perhaps wasn't really studied in the past or looked at closely?
Yes, when when I joined the group, we were on a number of different accounting systems. We never had that sort of hierarchy of holding company subsidiary relationship. It was a typical, entrepreneurial startup type of environment. So we ended up putting in NetSuite. We did a system migration. We got everybody onto the one platform. And ultimately, the goal was then to try and build up that kind of data so that we can actually start tracking, I guess, everything, seasonality, trends, especially between the individual regions. They've got very different cycles. And, well, unfortunately for us, COVID hit, and it kind of stuffed up everything in the process. So, we've certainly got data that we've never been able to have a look at before and to analyze. I personally have got a number of questions as to the accuracy of it in a steady state environment, so COVID aside. But it's still good to kind of get some kind of trends, and hopefully as we're coming out of COVID now, we'll start being able to benefit a lot more from it.
Is there any part of the business, again, having stepped in 2019, that you realized or you felt that you weren't getting the visibility you needed, that there needed to be more numbers produced regularly? There was something that you needed to hear about them more often or measured more effectively?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much the timesheeting element. If previously, if guys were on fixed fee contracts, we weren't that painful about getting timesheets done. It was a fixed fee, whether it's there or not, so be it. Obviously, time and material is a bit different because if you don't bill the time, or you don't book the time, you can't bill it. So yeah, for us, it was very much around the hours that are being booked, the utilization jobs, and monitoring the projects as a whole, just to make sure they're not running behind. How do we get those early warning flags that projects are starting to fall behind, that we're going to overrun in hours, and obviously being able to just take that corrective action sooner rather than later.
Now, was the solution a tool, or you had to reach out to other leaders in the organization to make this more of a priority and to have the follow-through?
Well, I was fortunate enough that before I started at Reveal, I was actually given the kind of the go-ahead or the heads up that we needed to look at putting in new systems. So by the time I actually joined, we hadn't started the process. That was pretty much my first job when I joined. And it was for that very reason, so that we could get the data and get the insight. And I was fortunate enough to have the full support of the management team in the process. They understood the need for it. They were obviously battling with it before I joined. And they needed somebody with the sort of finance expertise to be able to jump in and actually, make those decisions specific to finance, obviously after engaging with the rest of the business, and put in systems, and then I guess more importantly, make sure that the systems are working once they're in.
all of what has happened there, how has it impacted the business overall? One would imagine in a positive way.
Depends if you ask me or the employees.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, is there already clearly an impact, and how do you see it if there is?
Look, I personally believe there's been a massive impact and change in the business. I've been told by a number of the other senior sort of partner sort of level people that there's been a massive change as a result. We've gone from being a relatively small owner-managed business to being a rapidly growing and expanding business. Year on year, we're growing sort of 50+%. We're doubling our headcount.
Can you tell us what is the headcount of this company?
At the moment, we're sitting at just over 120 heads globally. We've got about 40 odd in Australia, about 20 odd in Canada, and the balance sitting across the US.
And is the management of the company, is it the hierarchy typical, or is it a little different how it's organized?
We've actually running a relatively flat company. So, we've got the CEO and COO who are their husband and wife. They own the company. They've been funding the company to date, and because they've been so involved in everything at the size of the company, they've just been hands-on, and they still are.
Is it privately funded? I mean, you haven't taken outside funding or anything?
Look, we've got like a little bit of sort of bank debt here and there, but no sort of PE or venture funding at this stage.
Darren, this is where I ask you for a finance strategic moment, and I had tried to prepare you a little bit earlier for this question, which I described as being sort of a standalone question. We're really looking for something like a lesson that you've had along the way, that your insight into finance, your experience, that might illuminate that for us. Anything come to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
For me personally, I think it all comes down to cash and cash of the business. I'm not sure whether I've been fortunate or unfortunate in that when I have moved to the various different companies that I've been with, for some reason I've had a knack of finding the companies where there's been cash flow problems, where we've been battling to actually meet the commitments. We've had to engage with banks and funders to kind of either get the bridging finance in place, and I guess just very carefully measure and monitor the customers, making sure that they're paying on time, so that we've got the early warning flags, and I guess just the overall importance of cash in a business. And it sounds stupid because obviously cash is king, and
yeah, everybody says it, but what you're getting at is the discipline it takes to make it.
That's exactly it. And making sure that you can forecast it out, where you've got grey areas around your contract, how you measure those, where you bring them in, and I guess the main thing out of that is the sooner that you can actually go to bankers or funders and say, hey, listen, we're running into a problem. I don't know, we're going to breach our covenants next month, 2 months, 5 months time. They're a lot more willing to assist and guide and actually help you and partner with you through the process. Whereas if you kind of send them a report at the end of the month and go, geez, guys, sorry, we breached it, then suddenly the alarm bells are going off and there's red flags and there's all sorts of meetings.
Managing multiple spreadsheets, disconnected data, numbers you just can't trust. Your finance team can't be the strategic partner your organization needs right now, with obstacles like that getting in your way. Vena can change that. Vena brings people, processes, and systems together in a single collaborative analytical platform so you can drive connected business planning and better decision making. And it's the only native Excel complete planning platform built for Microsoft 365 with Power BI embedded. With Vena, your financial and operational data is always connected, and your teams are always armed with insights and time to focus on what matters most. So when the stakes are high and the margin for error low, Plan with agility. Plan with resilience. Plan with Vena, so you can be prepared for whatever comes next. Visit venasolutions.com/planningaces to learn more about how Vena will help you plan for anything. It's Jack. I hope you're enjoying our discussion with CFO Darren Cooper of Reveal Group with a laser-like focus on cash management. Darren Cooper tells it like it is for many finance leaders out there. We would now like you to think back to that first 30 days, that first 60 days you occupied the CFO office at Reveal, and give yourself a piece of advice. Again, this would be what you would like to go back in time and tell yourself just as you're stepping into the role. What would that be?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting question. I think a lot of the time people jump into jobs and they don't necessarily know what they're getting themselves in for. It sounds all glamorous and all the rest. I do have a tendency that whatever job I end up at, I seem to be involved in systems that are changing, cash flow issues, as I mentioned earlier. And this job, I think I actually went in with the eyes wide open on. Before I went in, I knew the funding structure, I'd seen accounts, I was aware of the process that I was going to have to follow and the change that I was going to need to drive within the company. I probably need to be a little bit more patient in terms of pushing the guys and getting the change in. When I do something, I want to get it done. I want to get it done yesterday, and I want it done properly first time. So when you're kind of coming into a company like I was, and you haven't had the disciplines around, time sheeting or forecasting and all the rest, and you're trying to now bring them in and effectively corporatize a startup. It takes a lot of effort, and you've got to get a lot of buy-in from all the different parties involved, and a lot of the time they don't actually understand the need or why it's suddenly an issue. So for me personally, it would probably be just to have spent a bit more time trying to explain to the guys, why you need it and how it's going to change things, rather than just this is what we need to do and this is coming, so let's get it done. I think from the finance team in itself, when I moved across, it was me, myself, and I, which makes for great company. And so I was doing absolutely everything from processing of invoices, running payroll, doing, absolutely everything. And that was great for me to kind of get into the weeds and actually learn exactly about the company, what it does and how it does, and actually set it up exactly how, I wanted it and wanted it to work.
You said for us, like, you arrived in the job, and it seems like you were really confident that you knew really what needed to be done and tackled. As you said, there are certain areas you wanted to build relationships and communicate with. At the same time, a year into the job, COVID sort of arrives. And curious, again, you're part of the world. You're based in Melbourne. Can you fill us in a little bit? What was the initial impression? Was this something that's going to impact us in one way or another? I mean, here in the States, clearly we were a little caught off guard, I think.
So I think for us as a company, when I say that sort of internally as a company, it had very little impact on us in terms of how we operated. We pretty much just changed to working from home, but up until that point, all the sort of cloud setup, the cloud accounting systems, our IT systems, VPNs, all of that stuff was all already in place. It was all working pretty well. So for us, it was literally okay, cool, today we're working from home, nothing's changed, and get on with it. Where we had the big impact on COVID was pretty much, I guess, with the rest of the world, and everybody just going, well, what the hell now? And kind of in that deer in the headlights moment, everybody slammed on brakes on their programs that they were looking at doing. They either stopped them midstream because, I don't know, suddenly we didn't have access to their accounting or their systems, and we had to get the remote access. Some of the customers just didn't have the capability internally, and they had to actually build it up. Others, especially within the entertainment or hospitality side of things, their business is totally stopped. So the guys just weren't interested in spending anything because they weren't doing anything. Similarly with the airlines, suddenly they were no longer flying. The need was there to get our services in, but they just didn't have the revenues to be able to actually take it on. So it was very challenging for us from that perspective. A lot of companies at that point decided they were going to do the layoffs, pretty quickly, just to get them done. Cut hard, cut fast, do it once, and get it done. We kind of took a different view. Well, when I say we, I'm probably talking more our CEO than myself. Obviously from a finance perspective, I was obviously just seeing bleeding because we've got no revenue coming in, but all the bills are still going out. But he was adamant. He wanted to hold the team together, keep it as a family, keep everyone together. Once this thing passes, which we hoped would be a bit shorter than what it actually was, we wanted to come out stronger. We wanted to have the team together. We didn't want to have to start all over again, retrain people, find new talent, and all the rest. So it was a challenging time for us, similarly to a lot of other businesses. But yeah, we made it through it. I think we've come out of it a bit stronger than we went into it. And certainly from a market perspective, a lot of companies now have actually elevated the automation programs within their businesses. So previously, where it was, IT managers or individual finance or business unit leaders who were, putting in little programs for little portions of the business, now it's actually taking a board level strategic program that gets put out. So we're getting a lot more insight from the companies. They're getting a lot more aware of what they need to do, and obviously seeing a lot of benefits from what we can help them with.
Right. We'd like to ask our guests to reflect a little bit on the personal side for us. We're wondering if there's a personal habit or part of a daily routine that you have, something that sets you apart. It might be something a family member would point out to us rather than a colleague at work. It's something you're known for. Anything personal habit or part of a daily routine that comes to mind?
Probably the biggest thing for me is getting that exercise first thing in the morning. So I'm one of those really irritating morning people who wakes up at sort of 4:35 a.m. in the gym, get a quick workout in. I always joke I got to do it before my body realizes what I'm doing, but I actually do enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's the kickstarter to the day. Come sort of 6-7 o'clock, I'm done with gym. I'm awake. I'm refreshed. I'm full of energy, ready to go. And I generally get 2 to 3 hours of work in before everybody else is even rocking up to the office or to work. So that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Well, we're up to our final question where I get to ask you to look forward finally for us. We'd like to know over the next 12 months what your priorities as a finance leader are.
Going to get back onto my favorite topic in cash. So the industry that we're in is growing, depending on what you read, anywhere between 20 and 40% year on year. We're obviously no different in that. At the moment we're growing in excess of 50% year on year. We're implementing new technologies, which is obviously then accelerating the growth for us. And even this year alone, we've had massive increases in our pipelines, and there's just so much work out there and coming across. So for me, the main thing is going to be making sure we've got that cash on hand, getting some kind of, funding in place, or renegotiating terms with some kind of suppliers or customers even, just to keep the cash flow going. But effectively, the main priority is going to be managing the scaling of the operations and making sure that we're able to continue the business in an effective manner.
Darren Cooper, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Hello, listeners. Do us a favor. Be certain to subscribe to CFO Thought Leader on Apple Podcasts, or if you're an Android user, check us out on Spotify or Google Play. If you like the show, please recommend it to a friend.